All right, everyone. The other day we had an appalling case of censorship that was very quickly swept aside, and this happened at the Little Miami High School in Ohio. And what happened is they were having a football game, and for you Europeans, that means actual football, not soccer. Get it right. You're in the wrong continent. But I'm wondering if they named it the Little Miami High School because they're like, well, the winters are brutal here because it's Ohio, so we'll give it a warm, sunny name at least. Make us feel a little bit better. You're already stuck in Ohio, so, I'm not saying that it's like hell. There's some good things about it, but, not many. But these students, two of them, came out on the field. They were playing in the game, and one of them had a thin blue line flag, and the other had a thin red line flag. Now, the latter is actually, I never knew this existed, but it's for firefighters. For some reason, the school administrators thought this was egregious and political in nature, so they decided to suspend these students. Within not that many hours, like the same day, they unsuspended them. They're like, well, we were looking into it, and we didn't find a political motivation. There was insubordination, which is literally the term they use. They were being insubordinate, but they weren't being political, so, okay, we'll let it slide with a warning this time, and we'll let the coaches determine if there's any further punishment. If I were the coach, I'd be congratulating them and saying, oh, good job. You got the high school plenty of attention, by the way. This is what we need. What happened, really, though, behind the scenes, and this is a guarantee, is that a lot of people in that community, because this is Ohio, this is a state that leans red, this isn't California, where these students would have been probably lynched or something. It's not New York, where they would have been probably thrown in a jail cell for being politically incorrect. This is Ohio. A bunch of parents and people in the district complained. Thousands of them probably. Because people raised awareness of this. These students get dragged off and they say, well, fuck this. And they all called up the school. And the administrators noticed that the phone lines were ringing off the hook. That the answering machine was full, so to speak. And then they reversed their decision in a show of fealty. In a show of cowardice, and they should all be fired. The people in this district should not wait. They should demand the resignation of every one of the administrators that were involved in the decision to suspend these students. I don't know, was it admins? Because sometimes they act with unilateral impunity, or was it the principal? Whoever was responsible, find out, and at the next school board meeting ask for their resignation to be tendered. That's what you should do. You need better people that are if you want to educate the youth and have people learn reality as opposed to just, well, we made a rule in an arbitrary sense. You didn't follow it, so we're punishing you. There should be reason behind rules. Thin blue line and thin red line are never going to be political movements. Thin blue line is about respect for police. Now, some people, I think, as a libertarian, as a non-tough-on-crimer, of course, there are people that take it too far and think, well, the dude's got a badge on. That makes him Superman. That's not reality. Even less so would thin red line be political. You think the fire department is now a political edifice? It's political to say that you support people who put out fires? I think that they do a good job. Some of these dudes in volunteer forces, basically, they're risking their life for absolutely no reward just because they happen to be part of a fucking community. They do a great job. I'm scratching my head trying to think of the kind of weirdo that would make the argument that it was political in nature. Why did they suspend the students in the first place? I can understand if they were running down the field with a Joe Biden 2020 flag or a MAGA flag or something. Yes, clearly that's a political statement. It involves elected politics. These are activistic maybe, but they're not political, and I bet anything, these administrators or the principal or whoever made the final judgment, if these students were parading down the field with an Antifa flag or a BLM Black Power fist, I guarantee they wouldn't have been suspended. I don't think that they would. I'm sure that taking the knee is a political statement. When you think about it, it involves an organization, an opportunistic grifting front called BLM, that self-declares itself Marxist and bundles money through Act Blue for the DNC. That is a political statement. All of these same people, by the way, that'll complain about these kids, oh, they're being bigoted, they're supporting police and stuff. There used to be a time not that many years ago when we understood, generally speaking, you can support the basic concept of an edifice while supporting its reform. And that's what there's the nuance that people have left behind and forgotten is you can support the police in the general sense and say their lives matter, they should be respected and treated well, while at the same time as well admitting the law is a whore in many cases and is very much over-applied. We have laws against victimless crimes, which shouldn't exist. Something like loitering, public intoxication with no further exacerbation. You just happen to be intoxicated in public. Simple drug possession, simple drug use, things like truancy, which Kamala Harris had a big problem with and jailed parents for. Those things are victimless crimes. They should not be prosecuted. And there are cops out there that are goddamn fucking psychos, or they have a fucking power trip. There aren't that many firefighters, though, in this particular field. Firefighters aren't going to arrest you for having a reefer. They might put out the fire if you get so stoned that you light your bed on fire. They might come and put it out. They're not trying to be assholes about it. You know, they might hand you a bill afterwards, but you deserve it for smoking in bed anyway. That could be tobacco. That's perfectly legal, as long as you're 18, or 21 in many states now. The firefighters, what the fuck is political about that? They show up, there's a fire, they put it out. It's self-explanatory. It still gets suspended. It makes no fucking goddamn sense. Again, if it was a BLM flag, they probably wouldn't have had a problem if they had marched down with a hammer and sickle flag. If they had come out with like communist insignia on and Karl Marx banner or something, do you think they'd be suspended for that? I don't know that they would, because we live in a weird topsy-turvy world where celebrating genocide is considered to be okay and politically correct, and saying, yeah, generally speaking, I support the institution that puts out the fires that you moron rioters are starting, apparently is considered briefly to be political before people show up to complain. They should force whoever was involved in this decision-making out of this school district. They should be fired. They should tender their resignation immediately. And the parents and the teachers there and the students, you should all get together and protest these people and their decision. Don't let them off the hook just because they reversed the suspension. The fact that they issued it in the first place is bad enough. The students should show up at the next meeting too often. This is something I have personal experience with. Students almost never showed up for the meetings that occurred in Mill River, the high school I used to go to. Almost never showed up, and mostly there's nothing meaningful that's happening there, so it doesn't really make a difference. And politics can be boring. Administration can be boring. Legalistic civic stuff is, by and large, not particularly exciting unless you have like a New England town hall style thing. For senior law, of course, I had to attend several of these meetings. Thank you, Mrs. Congdon, I believe it was. Wonderful time. And anyway, at one point they wanted a new principal because the old one resigned. Initially, it was just going to be the administrators making the call. People balked at this. Various students, various teachers, other staff were pissed about this because normally, if you have this process going on, there's at least one teacher and student there to sort of oversee the process. Guess who got selected for the search committee? Because I showed up and I bothered to make a speech on behalf of the students, and apparently people thought that mine was the most coherent, although at the time I was butt-fuck nervous because I'm in front of like 100 fucking people speaking, and by the way, it's the only time I've done that. Normally it's through webcam. And the process was corrupt and loopy and gave me my first look at how administration really is fucked up, but at least there was a person there that was participating in the process to at least give the appearance that there was some fairness involved, although, trust me, the fix was in by the time I got there. Very, very funny story about why that particular principal, by the way, ended up getting fired several years later. It had to do with intoxication, but we won't get into that because it's a big problem. It's a big blot on the school's history. By the way, the administrators, I hope one of them sees this. I told you so. I was the one that wanted to vet several other people and actually bring them in to talk. Of course, I was paid no heed. I think that I was right in retrospect and they were wrong. And thus, another reason why I learned to trust my judgment when it comes to civic issues. This is moronic. For somebody to get suspended for carrying out a flag that's essentially the American flag with a blue stripe on it, and to say that supporting your police, absent any reform, the acknowledgement that there's police brutality, the acknowledgement that some laws shouldn't be enforced at all, which, by the way, isn't really police, it's prosecutors in the states mainly, that's not political in nature. And to claim that it is just beyond the pale. It makes no real sense. You can reform the police and make the police like Andy Griffith if you want, as long as you're willing to go after the real criminals, which is the other thing that people who are social justice warriors who probably want these students lynched don't get, because there are real crimes as well. Mostly committed by leftists at the moment, shooting legitimate counter-protesters, looting businesses, burning cars and stuff. Those are real crimes. They have victims, unlike loitering and public intoxication. That's about all. Peace out.